last speaker, but he will be delivering our for closing remarks. Ayan, for closing remarks. Now let me tell you something about him first. Now, he is the founder of Bangsamoro Research and Legal Network, or BRLN. He is also the founder of Philippine International Studies Organization, Decolonial Studies Research Network, and International Relations and Islamic Studies Research Cohort. He is a professor at the UP Diliman's Asian Center and Miriam College's International Studies Department. He researches policy issues relating to historical, religio-cultural, socio-political, economic, environmental, and security aspects of the Bangsamoro society and explores decolonial knowledge sources of the Global South as well as interdisciplinary study between Islam and international relations. Please help me welcome Dr. Nassef Adiong.
Together with their research on energy as well as on halal, which is quite imperative as we now precluding to our contemporary societies, especially the Muslims, on what are halal and haram, permissible and permissible. Before I do my talking, I'd like to ask probably some to begin our open forum, so that I would like to know what are the questions that might be posited by our dear colleagues and our students who are physically attending this session, and as well as probably there might be some questions on the virtual participants that we have. You have any questions, so that while we're here, we can also answer your queries.
Yeah. I'll be the first to ask. I'm very curious about this, and I want it from you, a scholar, no, a scholar, a person who is not talking from opinion but talking from evidence. What are the educational needs of our Muslim children in Mindanao, in general, and in particular, how is Islamic education so unique that that part of that education is neglected in many areas where they are? Like, for example, you're in Manila, you're not studying in Muslim schools. Like, what are the needs that we need to address so that it retains its value as an important part of curriculum, instruction, even learning environments and others? What are unique of Islamic education, and what are the current needs, and how do we help to address it?
Thank you, Dr. Carl, for those inquiries. The things that are needed in the Bangsamoro, or probably Muslims worldwide, is that it has to be more contextualized with the local societal needs, meaning that as I promote decoloniality in our actions, deeds, and in our lives, when you do curriculum design or crafting your own curriculum, or you're working on your program, educational program, it needs to be addressing the needs of the society. What happened in the Philippines is kind of a more colonial project. And not only in the Philippines that you can find this coloniality project by the colonizers, but you can also take a look at some of the experiences and historical past and memories that have experienced by the Global South countries. Many of the Global South countries, their policies, laws, ways of living, even in education, were highly colonized. Meaning, for example, how does political science were able to crafted in in UP Diliman, or many of the programs in UP, where many of the state universities benchmark or scoped in to how the UP have designed their own educational program, because it was kind of a total copycat of many of the programs in the United States. So how can these educational programs or social sciences and even physical sciences be well adapted to the societal needs of the Philippines if those context, principles, theories, and praxis are well embedded and entrenched with the experiences of Americans, right? So it doesn't really reflect the societal needs of the Bangsamoro. So as you can see in many of the challenges and many of the trends and developments that are happening in the Bangsamoro, they're more into agriculture, they're more into agroforestry, fisheries. So these are the things that BARMM might be specializing or concentrating on programs. Of course, Islam is always there, but it has a different, kind of history. How come in the 8th to 12th century epoch of Muslim Islamic civilization was more progressive, was more industrious, was more developed during the Abbasid dynasty, where we call this the golden age of Islamic civilization from 8th to 12th century, after the Mongol invasion, after the siege of Baghdad, after the Damascus was fallen from the Genghis Khan and the Khanates that were established afterwards. Because the Islam that time was more, interested with many aspects of lives, philosophy, falsafa, science, and many others. Can you believe that the first, even probably Vincent might know this, but even though Vincent was trained in the Western canons of philosophy, but you can see that in the Muslim world at the time, when you have the first teacher in philosophy, which is whom we know, the great Aristotle, as the first teacher in learning and philosophy, in the Muslim world, the second teacher after Aristotle was, the great Muslim teacher, Al-Kindi. Al-Kindi is a great Muslim philosopher that is widely known all throughout the Muslim world at that time. So there were more contextualized. There are many, even during the Ottoman Empire, they were discussing, I remember this in one of my, when I was in Turkey, the Sultan Mehmet, I forgot if it's 1, 2, 3, 4, but they were thinking on how to go to Constantinople, which is now the Istanbul nowadays, because they wanted to invade or go through from Asian side of Istanbul, going to the European side of Istanbul. They wanted to build a underground kind of a transportation, which actually it happened with the AKP party, that they were able to build an underground train transportation under the sea of the Bosphorus Sea. But those are the things that were even in the mid 15th and 16th century where Ottoman sultans were thinking about. And can you also believe that since we were, catapulted with this pandemic, COVID-19, in 2019-2020, can you believe that the first inoculation, the first vaccine that was invented, discovered, was by the Muslims? Can you even imagine that many European kingdoms even have to go through the Ottoman Empire just to get their own medication, just to get, because the hospitals were staples during the time of the Ottomans. And the first vaccine, the first inoculation that was invented by the Muslims during the Ottomans. So science and Islam is actually, they go hand in hand. So how come in the post-colonial world, Muslim nowadays are more concentrated on theology? So you can think about where science and philosophy get fall behind, while theological aspect of Islam and jurisprudence became the the norm thing in Islamic education. So those are the things that I can think of where Bangsamoro can be at the forefront, leading and pioneering many of these. Well, there's also one discourse which is on the tafsir side, which is on commentaries. Can you imagine that even Al-Ghazali, Ibn Sina, Ibn Rushd, and many of these great Muslim thinkers were actually analyzing and thinking many of their inventions, many of their science, technology, but after the Baghdad siege, many of the Muslims became commentators. They just comment on the great Muslim mujtahid thinkers at that time. So they were just commenting on Islamic sources. So we were greatly. The norm nowadays is more on commenting on Islamic sources. There are no original works that became the major thing during the golden age of Islamic civilization. So I hope that when you now rethink your own educational experiences, that we should not always be intimidated by Western canons, these Western canons, especially with Western modernity that came afterwards, where you can see many of your textbooks, your sources in your education, where the sources that were used and utilized by your professors, by your teachers, are primarily through and through a colonial project, and many of these authors are white male authors. I cannot see, many lacking resources of authors who are Filipino authors, Filipino scholars, Moro Muslim authors who have contributed to the epistemic knowledge on different social issues, social science, physical science, and among others, philosophy. I hope that many of you in your lifetime can contribute something where I'm very, very, might be happy to read some of your works as you contribute to the intellectual development of the Muslim world, especially in the Bangsamoro. So those are the things that I can imagine and think about. Probably Vincent can also chime in.
Just want to add, in terms of the education, since I believe Dr. Carl is very practical and actionable.